Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Joel Hunter here to go over a brief introduction to your syllabus. I want to go over the syllabus with you because it's such an important document, not only for you being able to navigate the class, but then to understand what the expectations are. I take a lot of time in preparing the syllabus to make sure that all the information that you need to succeed in the course is there, especially when it comes to what our goals are. So that's one of the things we'll cover. We'll cover our course objectives and the learning outcomes for the course, what you should expect to get out of it. Then we'll also talk about the assignments, the specific assignments that I have given you that is built on the readings. These are the online discussions and the quizzes. So we'll go through those briefly. I have a separate video to discuss those in greater depth. So then the graded assignments, we'll talk about that and the grading criteria. Then we'll talk about some other policies, course policies. And lastly, we'll go over the class schedule. And this is a really important part of the syllabus. It is at the very end of the document, which, by the way, I encourage you, as we are about to switch over to the screen here to look at this, that you have your own copy printed out so that you can make some notes as we go through the syllabus, and I underscore some things and highlight some things for you. So if you want to take some time to do that, I'll wait, and then we'll meet back here to go over the syllabus on the screen. By the way, if you haven't gotten them yet, make sure that you get our textbooks. This is the Houston Smith book and the World's Wisdom, the companion book that has the original texts. So do be sure to get these quickly. If you don't have them, get them today, because it is almost impossible to catch up if you get behind. It's a 5-week course and it goes quickly. So get the texts, and then I'll see you here in just a second to go over the screen. All right, let's take a look at the syllabus together. Hopefully you've got a copy printed out from our course canvas. You can find that if you haven't seen it yet. There's a link in the homepage, and there's also a permanent copy stored under files, so you can go to either of those places to find it. So first thing to point out to you in the syllabus is the contact information here. You can contact me by email, and you can use either Canvas or the interface in Canvas, or you can just email me directly from your email account to jhunter@tmcc.edu. This is an online class, and so you don't have the typical kind of interaction with an instructor that you get from a face-to-face class, traditional classroom. But I like to be accessible in the same way that the face-to-face classes are. So do feel free to use the email account. And I'm going to talk about my email policies here toward the end of this overview of the syllabus. So the course description includes not just the description given in the TMCC course catalog, but then sort of add to it my own questions that we're going to be looking at. So do have a look at this introductory part and the introduction also that I've provided here at the bottom of the first page and onto the second page. It's kind of long, but I think it will be helpful to you to understand my approach to the course. And actually, one part of it I do want to back up here and just read to you, just to go over it with you, because it's so important. You know, religion is often viewed as something so deeply personal that it isn't a appropriate topic for discussion. And not only are we going to be discussing it, we're going to be evaluating it. We're going to be analyzing the particular claims in religions. And so it takes a particular kind of stance that for some people just isn't comfortable. And you may have to be uncomfortable doing that, but that's what's required in the course. So let's look at this. It's a philosophy course. As such, its posture is objective. It attempts to stand outside or suspend all prior convictions and commitments one might hold so that one may examine its subject matter impartially. And of course, that's an ideal, but you want to strive as close as you can to being impartial in your evaluation of and reading of the religions. The practice of philosophy requires dispassionate and detached analysis and involves the discursive intellect. You might want to look up that term if you don't know what it means. Whereas the practice of religion requires passionate commitment and involves the heart, or if you prefer, the will and desire. That's what is often meant by the heart. It's the seat of will and desire. Good philosophy is ideologically neutral. However, philosophy also attempts to make one's own commitments and reasoning explicit and provides strategies for clarifying and challenging those commitments. Therefore, thoughtful reflection and interrogation is turned both outward and inward. Outward toward the object studied, that would be each of the religions that we're studying, as well as inward toward one's own convictions and commitments. The challenge posed by the latter requirement is that we are often unaware of our deepest convictions and commitments, or we just take them for granted, or they seem self-evident to us. They couldn't possibly be false. Nevertheless, a philosophy of religion course is not intended to help you discover the best religion, reject all religion, or do apologetics. A philosophy's currency is concepts, judgments, and arguments. Religion's currency is faith, trust, devotion, adherence to specific behaviors and practices. Philosophy and religion are not necessarily antagonistic on this account, but they do operate on different levels of experience, of thought, and action. Philosophy's contribution is clarifying what is obscure and making intelligible what is difficult to comprehend in religious claims, experiences, and practices. Thus, philosophy of religion aims to improve understanding of and communication about religions. I can't emphasize how important it is to get this orientation as you come into the course and sort of take stock of your own, and I'm going to use a charged word here, but don't take this personally. Become aware of your own prejudices. In other words, what prejudgments have you made about religion that you are going to have to struggle to suspend? I don't mean deny them. I don't mean necessarily even be skeptical about them, but I mean suspend them. And that goes for whether you are a participant in a religion, in other words, that you're a believer in one of the religions, or you're a disbeliever in all religions. Both types of students are going to have to learn how to suspend that judgment that they already hold, because often it is a deeply rooted judgment. It is one that is a very serious conviction or even a commitment that you have. And so in order to do this course well, you're going to have to learn to put aside all the kinds of claims and ideas that you think support that conviction or commitment and suspend them. I don't mean deny them. I mean suspend them. Don't use them. Try not to put them in play. Your idea here is to be an impartial student, examiner, and judge of what you read. Okay, so that is what the sort of mental space you have to be in, the sort of mental approach you have to take in order to really get what these religions are, what the specific religions are claiming. And if you really want to understand them, and if you really want to be able to talk with others about them, whether they are adherents of the religions or not, this is what the kind of posture that you'll need to take into the course to succeed. So I wanted to underscore that because it's such an important part and is one of the unusual things about a philosophy of religion course. So the rest of the introduction course you can read at your own leisure. Then the required texts I've already mentioned to you are The World's Religions by Houston Smith, and then the companion volume, The World's Wisdom by Philip Novak, who has compiled the source texts for the different religions. So what you do in the reading schedule at the end is you'll notice the reading selections that I've given you. and the page numbers then correspond to one or other of the books. And so World's Religions, that's the orange book, has the WR next to it, the pages, or the listing in the schedule. And the World's Wisdom, that's the kind of cream colored book is the WW. That's how that appears in your reading schedule. So that's what those abbreviations are for. Okay, so then the course objectives and outcomes there, I've already mentioned that our job here is to understand the basic teachings and practices of specific religions of the world. I want to back up to what I was saying earlier, because there's another point that's related to this objective and the learning outcome that's attached to it. And that is, if you come into the course already an adherent to one of the religions, you may think that you already have a grasp on the basic teachings and practices. And so your job then is to suspend that belief that you have. And if you think that you know what the basic teachings and practices are, then you need to put those out of play and adopt what is a Cartesian view, which is, I'm going to put out of play, I'm going to doubt that I know what I think I know, and I'm going to now see if I can examine this from the ground up. And so what you're going to be doing, what I'm asking you to do, is go through the textbook as if you had never heard of the religion before. And this goes for some of you, by the way, who might have rejected a particular religion. Maybe you grew up in a family that was an adherent to that adhered to a particular religion, and you've moved on past that, or you've walked away from it, or whatever, you've rejected it. And you too may think that you have a basic understanding of the teachings and practices of what you have rejected. You too will have to suspend that belief that you have in order to rebuild your knowledge of the religion from the perspective here, from a philosophical perspective, which is we're seeking to analyze the specific beliefs and practices, and do so impartially. So that comes back to what I said earlier. Okay, so your job here, or objectives, I should say, what we're trying to do is introduce you to the different religions. I'm sure several of these will be new to you, and then look at their history, look at how those traditions have developed. And then you're going to think and reflect critically on how they are situated in specific socio-historical contexts. That is, what kinds of societies are built up from religions or around religions, and then what kind of historical context did they emerge and grow. That's an important part of the story of each religion. And then how did the religion then shape the cultural values? What became valuable or not within the religion? How does it guide social actions and norms, behavior, for example, and laws? Okay, and then finally, another objective that we are after, a goal in the course, is that you'll be able to respond then to the what I call the aesthetics, which is the sort of outward experience that is reported in each religion. What kinds of experiences do they exhibit, and then the ethics. What is the moral framework of the various religions? Okay. And then, so those are our goals, to cover that content. And then the learning outcomes, what I want you to be able to walk away from in the course, are these 3 points here. And you can see what those are. But basically, to have a better understanding of some of the major world religions and their beliefs and their practices, and how those play an important role in the lives of many human beings, billions of human beings. Okay, so now let's move on to the course material, the requirements, and how you are assessed. And I want to emphasize something here in the first paragraph, and that's close reading. I've got a whole separate video about this because it's so very important. And your success on the graded parts of the course, that is the discussions and the quizzes, depends entirely on how effective your reading is. And so the kind of reading that you are going to be required to do to succeed in the course, and I mentioned this in the very first video, is close reading, it is aggressive and slow reading, it is active reading, and this requires time and effort on your part. But it is really necessary to do well on the graded parts of the course. Okay, so let's talk about those. You have then 2 graded components, online discussions and quizzes, each of which count for half of your course grade. And then I have some brief discussion for each of these in the syllabus, but then I also have a video that I'm going to have for each of these as well to go into a little more depth. One thing I want to bring out on the discussions assignment is the rubric here, which I mentioned at the very top. Be sure that you go to Canvas and grab your copy of the rubric and have that ready for the discussions video if you haven't seen that one already, because you'll want to understand what the expectations are for you in your contributions that you make to the discussion and how I'm evaluating you. Excuse me. And the rubric gives you a lot of detail about that, and you will see that rubric supplied to you in the grading that I do. So have a look at that, have a look at it on your own, and then have a copy with you as you go through the video on the disc for the discussions. Okay, the basic thing, and just I'm going to briefly overview it, is you're making 2 contributions to an online discussion each week. One contribution is a response to a prompt that I provide, and I've already put those up, and they're available, starting week by week. And you will give them your answer to one of those prompts that I've given you, and it's up to you which one you want to do. Then, so that's about a 200-word response. That's what I call your original contribution, and you will post that by the due date that I give in the class schedule, which is we're going to get to at the end. And then you will follow up with a second contribution that is going to be a response to another student's contribution. Now, you may want to respond to someone who answered the same question that you did, or you may want to respond to someone who answered a different question. That's entirely up to you. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, what is required is the 2 contributions each week. Okay. And then I mentioned that there are 6 discussions. And what did I do with the... There it is. No, it isn't. And the first discussion is what I called the inventory one. And I've got I'll go into it in more detail, but what you need to know is basically 1 a week, but I have an additional one that helps frame the course with our personal inventory, and so that is that's sort of a bonus one. It's an easy one, and it's an automatic A if you complete it on time. So there's no harm to your grade there. It's like an extra credit, really. So each discussion is worth excuse me, about 8% of your final grade. And your quizzes, that's the second graded component. Again, 1 a week, about 20 questions each week, and those are already posted and available. What I'm going to do in the quiz video is go through an actual example of a quiz that I've given in the past and show you what those look like, just for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Those are available too, also on Canvas. Again, there's 6 quizzes. There are 5 that are about our readings, and then there's a 6th, which is an inventory. Again, framing the course, beginning and end. Excuse me, my goodness. And those the inventory quizzes are freebies. Again, all you have to do is complete them thoughtfully, and they're automatic A's. Let me get a sip here. We'll see if that does it. Okay, and the grade structure is your typical A, B, C, D, F, and the quantitative part that goes along with that. And Canvas, of course, tracks that for you when you submit your assignments, and I grade them. You get the quantitative score, so you always know where you stand in the course. Okay, other policies and information. Again, in attendance, it's all about showing up. a minimum number of times, which is 4. You want to be able to, you need to be able to show up and check for the announcements when there's new announcements posted. I will typically have a video for each week, and then you will show up for the to the original contribution on the online discussion. You'll show up to take the quiz. You'll show up to give the reply to a student's discussion. So those are the 4 minimum times. And Canvas, of course, tracks all of that, so I know who's showing up, who's not. So do demonstrate your engagement in the course, even though it's online and you do it sort of at your own pace and leisure and time. You do have an expectation to meet this minimum level of engagement, and I stress that it's minimum. If you really want to do well in the course, then you'll be more engaged than just 4 times a week. Okay, then completing your assignments on time, of course, that's going to go without saying. I'm going to say that here about late work. So again, since I've built into the course all of your assignments in advance, and I've given you all the due dates in the schedule, and everything can be done, at your own pace, it's entirely up to you to get it done. And if you have other things that you do, like if you work, and I know many of you do, or if you are like going to take a trip, if you get sick or something like that, you can still complete your work if you are keeping up with the readings. So just make sure that you get them done and don't turn in things late. Okay, so email policy. Yeah, so I try to be as accessible as I can by email and be responsive as I can. I do have some boundaries on that. So I of course get notified every time I get an email, as we all probably do. But I don't respond immediately, and so I don't want you to expect that. I try to get to you within 24 hours, especially during the week. But if it's on a weekend, you should not expect me to respond until the first weekday or holiday, for that matter. And then in the evenings, and by evening I mean after 6 o'clock, you certainly shouldn't expect a reply to me the same evening. I would try to get to you by the next morning. So just keep that in mind about my policy on email. And then I give you what I think is a really helpful a list of tips on how to do email well. It's a good practice for those of you who are working toward a profession, or who have to do the occasional email that is more formal. And to learn good etiquette is a really important skill. It will impress the people that you communicate with, and it will serve you well. So do have a look at my tips here, and please implement them in your communication with me. And you can of course use this in other ways. So I do hope that's useful to you. Academic integrity, of course, goes without saying. Plagiarism is just not acceptable. The only time this really would, I think, come up in our course is in the online discussions. If you copied and pasted something from the internet without quoting it and sourcing it and citing it appropriately, and present it as if it were your own work, then that's plagiarism, and ethically I am compelled to pursue that. So I will pursue disciplinary action if you do it. So just don't, and we'll get along fine. Then if you have a documented disability, some of you would be eligible for some accommodation, and that can often take the form of additional time on quizzes. So if you do have a documented disability, make sure that you contact the Disability Resource Center and get the documentation. What's great about the center is that they do all the coordination with your instructors, and so they will reach out to me and to your other instructors and make sure that the requirements of the documentation are met. So if you have a documented disability, be sure to use that resource. And lastly, let's go through the class schedule. Okay, so we got 5 weeks. Week one is kind of a packed week because it's not only an introduction where I'm asking you to read the point of departure chapter in World Religions, and then go over the handout, the model that I've given, but also you're going to do your Hinduism reading in both World Religions and the World's Wisdom texts. So you have them. First of all, discussion 1 and quiz 1, which are due June 1st. That's coming up quickly. And in that, you will be going over the model. I put the discussion in there because I want to make sure that you reviewed the model. And then the quiz 1 is an inventory of what you're bringing into the course, your own thoughts about the categories in the model. Just to talk about how you see those right now coming into the course. And this, there's no wrong answers to that quiz. So, you just be open and honest about it. And then the value is when we get to the end of the course, let's see if I can pull that up just a bit. Nope. Yeah, so when we get to the end of the course, I guess you can't quite see it on my, let me see if I can move this down. There we go. There's an extra credit quiz. And so you redo the inventory after you've gone through all of the readings and all of our material. And it's a great exercise to see, how your own thinking has evolved on the key questions that we raise in the model. Okay, then, so it's basically we're going to go through 5 major religions for each week. So week 1 is Hinduism, week 2 is Buddhism, week 3 Judaism, week 4 Christianity, week 5 Islam. And notice the due dates that I give you for your discussions and your quizzes. So make sure that you get your online discussion contributions done. And then I, give you a day buffer there before the quiz is due. The due times are always 11:55 p.m. that evening, the evening of the due date, and that's mentioned up earlier in the syllabus. And then notice over on the right, it tells you your page numbers and the text from which it is drawn. So WR is World Religions, WW World's Wisdom. Right. So that's it, gang. And I look forward to seeing you in our first week, and make sure to check out the other introductory videos. I'll check you out later. Thanks.